Hey y'all, Andrew Bateman here with GCK Kayaking and Outdoors. In response to a few requests I've had, I'm going to make a video about kayaking for the big man. So I've had a lot of questions about what craft you might want to look into, also about tips and tricks, things maybe I've learned, and what to expect for prospective paddlers of substantial stature. So I'm about 330 right now. Most of my paddling life I've been closer to 380, so I'm not a small fellow at all. I also have some limitations like blown knees, impingement in the rotator cuffs, things like that. So I just wanted to share some of what I think might be valuable, especially to those who are just getting into this and are of more substantial stature like myself. So first off, the most primary question I've had is, what boat should I get? Now, I don't have super experience on this, but I've got some that I think will add some value to what you do when you search. So obviously, the first thing most of us are going to look at, let's look at the weight capacity metrics on the manufacturer's website. And I found sometimes those are a bit optimistic, but also there's something we should take into account far more than just the weight capacity of the boat. And that is the center of gravity, especially as folks like us of larger stature would have, and how that would influence the boat on open waters. So for example, I just by happenstance, when I got back into paddling, ended up getting a Wilderness Systems Commander 14, which is one I would highly recommend. It's kind of a hybrid for anglers, and therefore I'm sitting low to the floor. And the good thing about that is my center of gravity is lower, so I'm far more stable. So I really wanted a boat where I could sit higher with adjustable seats. So I did at one point get an Ascend 33, a Jackson Cuda, and a couple others to try out. And unfortunately, they felt great when I sat down in them, and then getting them in the water, they were so unstable that even though I wasn't even near the weight capacity, they weren't something that I could trust to go out into the backcountry. And so I would always find myself coming back to the same kind of hybrid open kayaks like the Wilderness Systems Commander 14, and there's a native 14.5. I can't remember the model that I have, but I'll roll that in here. Those two I highly recommend. One note, another model that I can't remember, I have a Wilderness Systems sit inside. It's still 14, so it's a good length, and I would recommend 14 or above for folks of really substantial stature, again, probably 300 pounds or over. The only drawback to those has to do with your width. Again, being kind of broad, I can sit in it, it's super stable. It's not horribly uncomfortable. However, the cockpit walls kind of come in, and so they're kind of digging into your hips and things like that. One thing I did to somewhat negate that is put pipe insulation on the sides, which softens it up a little bit. But again, if you're given the option, you might as well go with something that's more comfortable, like the Commander 14. So that would be my recommendation. And again, other large fellows, sound off down in the comments as to what you prefer for your preferred paddle craft. So next, I would say make sure you have an appropriate paddle. This is actually a new one. Sorry, there we go. This is actually a new one that I got. I've been using an Aquabound Stingray hybrid, which is kind of, I think, kind of the industry standard. And I didn't realize until I got this new one that I really did a lot better with a more extended length paddle. So check that. Again, we're big fellows in big boats, and we need paddles to match. So there's that. Also thinking about that in terms of PFD, personal flotation, life jackets, and things of that nature. And again, subjective. You choose whether or not you wear one, but it is by law, at least here in Texas, that we need to have one in the craft. And so on more open bodies of water, places I don't know, I'll usually wear one. On waters that I'm really familiar with, often I don't. So that is what it is. Again, those orange ones that we're all familiar with from probably all our lives, they're suitable. Thing you're going to run into as a big fella is that you're going to have all these, marketed that you see that are kind of the smaller, more streamlined ones, but most of the time they're not going to fit. They're going to be terribly uncomfortable. They're not going to provide the buoyancy you need. So do more research into that. I'm by no means an expert. I've just got one of the old orange ones thrown in the back of mine. So beyond that, sorry about that. Beyond that, let's talk about, here's what we really need to understand is conditions and limitations. That's going to dictate everything else. Our conditions, our limitations, the route conditions and the route limitations, as well as the limitations of our craft and our equipment. Okay, so to the degree that you can, know your route. And I'm speaking here primarily to those who are not really versed in paddling. A lot of you will know this, and that's fine. But there's value in this for everybody, especially those of us who are large. And if we haven't done this long, we may not have the stamina to do what maybe we want to do right out of the gate. So to the degree that you can, I always recommend going on and looking at satellite views of where you're going to be heading to get a better idea of the area. While they can be very just poorly predicted, of course, looking at weather, primarily winds, is going to be pretty important, because that can be a big detractor. In fact, I'm I'm always out here in the bayou. I'm around alligators all the time, and people are always saying, aren't you afraid of the alligators? And that's not my primary concern. Wind and wake are going to be the two things that I am more concerned about than anything else, and that I've had the most white knuckle moments with, and one time was very nearly fatal. Winds are no joke either, especially if you're lacking the stamina, and also your craft can play into that, whether you have a rudder or not can play into that. Those are all more advanced things to go into. But know your conditions, know what to expect. I would strongly recommend, especially for beginner paddlers, unless it's a super calm day, don't take yourself onto a big expanse like a lake or something like that. If you can, find something that's more like where I am now on Armand Bayou. It's a tributary that has a lot of winds and meandering bends in it, because at least even if you have strong winds, you'll be able to get some rest here and there. And point of fact, right now, the winds are 15 mile an hour with 24 mile an hour gusts. I found a little pocket here where I'm pretty well sheltered, so hopefully you're not hearing too much wind noise, but this just goes to show there's some nasty winds out today. They're really pushing me, but you'll get some relief if you find some places that aren't just wide open, so there's that. Now, one thing I'll talk about in regards to, again, the conditions of you and your craft that's really important: are you able to re-enter your kayak should you come out accidentally? And this is a major challenge for folks for big frame folks trying to get back in. It's easy to flip the boat back over rather than being able to get yourself on top. So I would strongly recommend, if you have the ability to, if you can get into a pool or something like that. I know it may look a little silly, but it's certainly worth knowing your ability if you can re-enter your boat so that you're more comfortable with that should you ever find yourself in that position in the wild. Okay, so now another thing is entering the water, launching, and our re-entry, if you will, to the launch location. So some people, more standard size, I'll say, can get in pretty easily. They may be able to just set their boat in, sidestep into it, and sit down, whereas we don't so much. That was a really big gar. We don't so much have that option. Now, if you're in a place where there's a slide launch, which is one of those where you're kind of in a trough and you have rails on your sides or overhead or both, those are great options. They make it a lot easier for you, and they also prevent some of the damage to your boat that you may have when you repeatedly launch or slam back into a concrete conventional launch like I most of the time have to do. So knowing that, you can do that, but you need to make sure that you understand you're doing some damage to your boat. You're going to need to try to keep up with preventative maintenance, and eventually you are going to start to see water taking on your boat if you do nothing about it. So be mindful of that. Beyond that, just more conventional paddling wisdom. Make sure you have what you need. Make sure redundancies where possible exist. Stuff like first aid, certainly hydration and things like that. Have yourself a nice dry bag. Be well organized depending on where you're going. Know what you need to take. Know what to expect as far as, again, conditions and wildlife. So to recap on what we've talked about primarily, it's going to fall into limitations and conditions, that of our equipment, ourselves, and our kayaks. If we know that and we have planned for that and understand, then we're going to have a good time. And don't let anything deter you. I've known some folks who are either intimidated by, again, their own stamina, their own limitations, that are intimidated by the wildlife or the unknown or anything above. If you can find somebody who's well versed in it to kind of ease you into it, never feel like you've got anything to prove. That's the most important thing. This is in my opinion, the greatest pastime that you can do. Anyway, with that, I hope some of this has helped. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say in the comments. Tell me how experiences that you had, equipment that you prefer, and lessons that you've learned in this great hobby. God bless us. Good freaking grief. That is a big ass gar. I'm sorry. Oh, see, they catch me off guard more than alligators. Like, you'll see them and the alligators are rolling, but the gar, you won't see them, and all of a sudden they're up around your boat. And we got some out here that are about 12 foot. So, again, one good thing about having a 14-foot boat, or whatever length your boat is, you can judge the length of gators and gar and things like that. So there's an added bonus. Anyway, God bless. Take care.